What's up everybody, and thank you for joining me for another video. My name is Whack4863, but you can call me Whack. In today's video, I'm going to talk all about the Purge and specifically what's coming with the Age of War Chapter 4 and the changes that are about to hit Conan Exiles and the Purge system. Now that update is scheduled to roll out to the game platform-wide on April 2nd, 2024. We are going to jump right into a level 10 Purge and see what we get. Now I have been through an absolute ton of iterations on the base that I'm going to show you today and that I'm going to use today, but the most important change that I actually made was during a live stream when someone told me to move my treasure coffer away from the wall. I was having consistent errors with the Purge not being able to raid my base, and when I made this change, when I moved it out more into an open area, I did consistently get the Purge just like we have now. Now the forward operating base has landed, and I'm going to take myself out of creative mode and engage in this level 10 Purge. One of the important things that you're going to want to make sure that you have is the gas arrows. These are going to help soften up the targets as they're running to your base. Another important strategy is to create points where the enemies are going to aggro. Give them areas that they feel like they can get to an enemy, but not actually being able to get to an enemy. You can see currently they are aggravated with me, but the only ones that are actually able to get to me are the archers. So the rest of the fighters are not able to get to my location. Now it's important to spread out your gas arrows as much as possible to do as much damage as possible. You can see that right now I have these enemies spread all over the place, and that is exactly what I was trying to accomplish with this base. I don't want them all attacking in the same place all at the same time, because that's how you get overwhelmed, and that's what leads to thrall death. Another thing that I really wanted to do with this build was create a build where I could be the commander, where I didn't have to be the most important part of what was defending against the Purge. And you can see as I cause damage to the enemies, they're not sure where to attack. They think they can get to me, they think they can get to the thralls that are in my bait boxes, but they actually can't get to them. So what that creates is a moment where these guys actually have a difficult time figuring out where to attack. And with this setup, we're really just exploiting the way that the AI works. Now every single thrall that I have hired at this location is a Sumerian berserker. The archers are Sumerian berserkers, the fighters are Sumerian berserkers, and I chose them because really they're one of my favorite, but they're also very easy to get. They have a guaranteed spawn in the exiled lands, and so you can amass an absolute ton of these guys very easily. Now this is something that's very important that's just spawned in here, and you want to keep an eye on the forward operating base so you know when this is coming. That right there is a platform for the Star Metal Caller. Now the Star Metal Caller is going to rain down star metal on your base. It is very terrifying and it can do a lot of damage if you're not prepared. So you want to keep an eye on where that is. Now you're going to see the platform quite a bit of time prior to the actual mage initiating the star metal. So keep an eye on the forward operating base so you know when it's coming, and that way you will be prepared when the audio and visual cues start to pop up for the Star Metal Caller. Now as you can see, most of the enemies that are entering the base don't have full health. They actually walk in with half health or less. That is important because it gives the thralls that are doing the melee a much better chance to kill what is coming after them. And you can see just by shooting a few gas arrows and keeping some damage on the different enemies, it's going to allow me to pull a lot of that aggro. So they're going to stop and think, ooh, I need to run over there. Or, ooh, the damage is coming from here, and this is the most important target. Now there still are enemies that will run right past the damage and head directly to your coffer. The demolishers are never going to stop and react to damage. The golems are not going to stop and react to damage. And some of the fighter enemies won't stop and react to damage either. They're simply going to try to get to your coffer. The thieves are a really good example of something that is going to try to get to your coffer. However, they can be thwarted with a bit of damage sometimes. Now you might notice that on my hotbar I also have star metal arrows. It's very important for you to have star metal arrows in any purge above level 6. The reason for that is that you're going to get golems. Now, you can use the new ballista to take out golems, but I find that to be the slower way to actually do it. Now, it's probably important for me to also tell you that I am playing on PvE, and if you're playing in PvP, you want to make sure that wherever you're shooting the gas arrows, you'll need those thralls to be wearing helmets that give them gas protection, otherwise you'll just be doing damage to your own thralls. You can now see the platform for the Star Metal Mage has lit up, which means we've reached the second stage of that happening. Once it lights up, the final stage is for the mage to walk out and initiate the Star Metal falling on your base. And I'll show you how I handle that once that comes. Now, it's also not a bad idea for yourself to have a protection against the gas when you're shooting the arrows. You can see I'm standing in the noxious gas right now and taking damage. I'm not too worried about it because I am in admin mode, so I can always just heal myself. But if you're playing a regular game, it's not a bad idea to do this in a sandstorm mask or a variant of that. You can actually see I've lost one door here, but that is because I've run a lot of purges and I haven't kept up on doing repairs to my base. I'm going to place a noxious gas arrow right in that platform where the Star Metal Collar is going to go, just because I feel like we're getting close to when that's going to happen. Now, when that Star Metal Mage comes out, you are going to want to make sure that you're ready and prepared to deal with it. You could do this a couple of ways. You can either do it with arrows, which is what I'm going to try to do, or you can actually just run out there and fight him. He doesn't have a whole lot of hit points, so you should be okay getting him killed this way. So you can see they are standing there, and we're just going to pepper them with some arrows, and they've already called Star Metal. So it's a very, very fast process for them to call it down, but we should have them dead right here. There we go. Now they're dead, and no more Star Metal is going to come after that last bit there. Now you can see it does an absolute ton of damage to the base, and I'll show you what all was destroyed in that short bit of time. But I could have been faster at engaging with it and had it killed much quicker, and that just would have reduced the amount of damage that it did to my base. We do have a slight issue from the breakage because some of these guys are actually falling down, but we should be okay. It should be fine. I'm just going to continue to work on these guys the exact same way we were. Now, I have already shot 100 gas arrows during this level 10 purge, so it's very important to make sure that you have enough gas arrows to make it through the entire thing. I would recommend at least having 200 ready to go when you initiate the purge. Now I'm going to do something that's going to change the way the purge is reacting a little bit, but I want to show you exactly what's going on in some of the different areas of my base. So I will no longer be a focal point for aggro at this point in time because I'm actually going to cloak, meaning that nothing's going to see me. So let's talk about the bait boxes and what I actually have going on with these. I have two sets of bait boxes. One is here and the other is right here. Now, these are spread around the base. You can see I have thralls in there to drop the hot liquid on the enemies when they run by. I also have these spike traps that really only work one time unless you run around and reset them, which I've found the damage not to be enough for me to worry about resetting them. You can see it doesn't do a whole lot of damage when they step on it, and so they're just there for the first wave. Now what happens is when these guys drop the grease on top of them, it actually creates aggro. Then the enemies run up these slopes and try to get in from the top. Now, I recently added these so that I could get a vantage point in all 4 corners of my base. The enemies won't be able to reach me here, but I can also use this location in order to shoot in various different directions. The other bait box that I have is just that empty structure there. And the reason why I have those empty structures a little ways away from my base is for the golems when they spawn. Because the golems that have the explosive head jars will path to the first location that has a building, and then they will try to destroy that building. This is just to give me a buffer so that I can destroy the explosive head jar guys before they reach the main section of my base, meaning I won't have to do as much repairs. Now, for some reason, I have a thrall that's come all the way out. They shouldn't be doing that with the settings that I have, but I do have to come down here and give her a little bit of help real quick so that she can get back to her location. Like I said, when I changed my setting, I took a lot of the aggro away from me and allowed it to get to my thralls. That creates a problem where they can actually get overwhelmed by all these enemies. She shouldn't be anywhere near where she's at right now with the settings that I have them with. I don't know why she keeps running outside. And there you go. That's why this is within the range of where she should be able to go. And she had to run all the way outside the base in order to get to what she was aggroed on way out here. That wouldn't have happened if I was still gaining aggro. Let's go ahead and deactivate my cloak mode. We'll get back in our location. It looks like we have somebody that's stuck in the wall there. But we'll get back in our location and start this process again where we are actually doing damage with the arrows. And hopefully we haven't let too much through while I was explaining what we're doing. Anytime you hear someone cheering, that means they've made it to your coffer. I'm not sure how this guy got here, but you want to make sure that you pay attention to the cheering because that's when they make it to the coffer, they cheer, and then they start looting what's in there. Now we have the Stygian Hand of War that has challenged me, and I actually figured this out recently that I can pull him to a spot where he's just going to fight me. So I'm going to drop down here, and I'm going to allow most of these people to get to me. Now, what you can do is actually pull that Stygian Hand of War over the edge. You just need to get close, make him fall down when he attacks, and then we can just exploit the fact that he wants to get back home. He thinks it was a bad idea to come out here, and he doesn't want to fight anymore. Now, I really like this area that I've created because it allows me to bring what enemies I want over the wall in order to kill them. Now let's talk about this section here. The reason that they weren't just pathing through here and into my base is because I have my foundations set at different heights. So if they destroy this, they're at a height where they can't walk up that, and that keeps this wall an actual wall, and they would have to get through many more foundations in order to get a straight line to my coffer. The fact that they can walk up this allows me to control them in a specific way. So if I drop down here, catch some aggro, want to fight a little bit, I can do that. It's easy for me to get away just by rolling over the edge. And the only way that they're actually going to come over and come down is if I get close enough to where they attack, and that attack animation drops them over the edge. Otherwise, they will not fall over it. Let's talk about getting the star medal once it's fallen. This particular star medal is already exposed, likely from the explosions of the gas arrows and the combination of the fire that she was dropping here, but we can just harvest that guy right up. It looks like we actually lost 2 thralls during that purge, and it's likely that we lost those 2 because I was in an admin mode and not taking any of that aggro. That's one thing I've noticed in my testing. When I go into admin mode and I don't help out, it does overwhelm my thralls. I also think that we lost a thrall in this one bait box. We'll look in here. We absolutely did lose one thrall running this siege cauldron. Now, most of the time, I just take whatever there is in the cages and replace these spots with the thralls that I'm not very excited about receiving from the Purge. So they're more expendable than anything to me at this point in time, but you could put them in armor and give them a fighting chance. Let's take a look at what we got from the Purge here. All of the thralls that are in my bait box actually did not have any armor on, and I had not leveled them. We've taken everything from the Purge, and it's a pretty big list of items that we got. We didn't get this a Final Breath of the Red Mother, that was mine, but we did get some Star Metal tools. We also got a Watch Blade and quite a few recipes. We got a named Bearer, an Archer 3, a named Archer, a Relic Hunter Treasure Seeker, Iskar the Sellsword is there, then we have a Zamorian Barkeep, and lastly, a Luba the Luscious. Let's talk about the main structure of the base and the idea behind this design. There's only one entry point. Even though the NPCs are able to run up the ramps, they can't actually get into the base by running up those ramps. They have to come through the main entry point. Now, this is where the idea of how to handle the Purge can change and vary from player to player. My strategy is outside of the base. I want all the enemies split up. I don't want them all shuffling through that main gate right away, because the amount of enemies that come in the Purge will overwhelm what thralls you have. Let's face it, on both sides of the AI, it's not the greatest, and the removal of Stunlock puts your thralls at risk. So, when your thrall is fighting multiple enemies, it's likely to be a death sentence unless someone else gets involved, yourself or another thrall. So prior to them entering the base through the main gate area, I want them spread out and taking damage from the gas arrows and the different bait boxes that I have around the outside of the base. Once they're inside, I have a simple maze, and this maze allows them to choose various paths to run through. The reason why I chose to go with this style of maze is because, again, once they're inside, I want to split them up. I don't want them all attacking my thralls in force. I want them in different areas of this larger area, working their way through the path and reaching my thralls individually. That way my force of melee thralls has a better chance of not being overwhelmed by the number of NPCs that have entered. Now, I chose not to put any doors in this area because this is where I want all the fighting to occur. This is where I have the archers set up to shoot down inside, and where I have the fighter thralls set up to destroy the main forces that are coming into the base. Then we get to the doors, and I've gone through a lot of different variations on doors. You can see there's actually 6 doors there, but it's only 3 doors that they have to get through to get to the coffer. The reason why I built it this way, again, was to offer multiple paths that the Purge can use to get to the coffer, but each and every one of those paths are through my choke points. Additionally, you can see right above the coffer I have a siege cauldron, and the reason for that is if someone makes it to the coffer and they pick up loot, the siege cauldron will drop fire on them and they will instantly drop that loot and not be able to walk it out right away. Additionally, at the doors you can see I have the burning siege cauldrons as well. This will help to preserve the life of that door should something make it past your thralls. Additionally, with the addition of the thieves who are going to try to pick your doors, if they somehow sneak past your thralls, the siege cauldron will drop hot liquid on them. Now, if they are invisible, it's not going to do that. However, if you are using the gas arrow strategy, when they take damage from that gas arrow, it is going to take them out of that invisibility. The farthest back row of archers is the highest row, and they can hit things that are outside of range from the rest of the archers. These archers are mainly there to shoot enemies that are outside of the base. Again, this is another strategy for dragging aggro away from the areas that are most vulnerable. such as your treasure coffer or just piling in through your front gate. Let's talk about what I've been calling the bait boxes, because there's been a lot of question from people about what I was putting in there and how I was setting them up. I have two different variations of the bait box here to show you how you can set these up to create points in your base where aggro is going to be drawn. The first one is just 8 foundations with some walls and a couple of siege cauldrons inside. Both of those siege cauldrons would be manned by a thrall, and they would be dumping that hot liquid on enemies as they run by. What happens when they dump that hot liquid is it creates a moment for the aggro to change and for that enemy to actually be aggravated by the thrall that is manning the siege cauldron. When it's all enclosed, there is a very small area where the enemies can shoot through and actually hit your thralls. Now, don't get me wrong, I have lost thralls in these bait boxes. However, I haven't been putting them in armor, and I've just been using the quote-unquote trash that I've been getting from the purges to man these stations. Now let's talk about the second version of the bait box that I have here, and I just made this because I was trying to think of a way to effectively go and reset these spike traps around the outside of the bait box. Now this setup could be more risky than the initial setup because the parts used to put this together do not have as much hit points as the previous bait box, which is all stacked on foundations. However, if resetting the traps from a safe place is something that you want to do, you could set it up something like this. However you set it up to enter this area, you can interact with these spike traps from over these fences, so you can essentially reset those spikes. And I recently redid one of the corners on the base just to show you how you could set this up so that you can reach those spike traps and reset them. Now, what these bait boxes are going to attract are any enemies that aggro against your thralls or yourself. These traps are not necessarily going to aggro the enemies that are focused on destruction of your base or reaching your coffer. However, if you're familiar with the Purge, the enemies run to your base and then travel along the wall in order to get into your doors. So depending on where the forward operating base spawns, if you put these on the corners of your base or edges of your base, it's likely that you will cause damage to both the enemies that aggro towards players and thralls and the enemies that are just looking to get to your coffer. I feel like the corners of the base are the best place to put them, and that's why I chose to put them there. Now let's talk about the empty structure bait box. This is just for the golems, and specifically the explosive head jar golems. Now, keep in mind that these will or will not be effective depending on where the golems walk. If the golems were to walk through the open area between these two bait boxes, neither one of them would be effective. The golems seem to path to whatever structure is closest to their spawn point, and they start destroying it. Now there are two different types of golems, the explosive head jar golems and then the fighter slash debuff golems. The explosive head jar golems are going to path directly to your building and start destroying it. When you defeat them, they drop an explosive and it does massive damage to your base. So building this away from my base allows me to have a small platform area where I can control how much damage actually happens to the base, and if this structure gets destroyed, it's not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. This will also attract the debuff golems as well, because they will try to attack your structure. Now my recommendation for dealing with the explosive head jar golems is to shoot them with the star metal arrows in order to kill them. I don't recommend an assault on them in melee range because it's hard to get them separated from the other golems, and those other golems will likely overwhelm you between the debuffs and the sheer amount of golems that are going to be spawning in. So if we take this into the game and put it to practice, you can see all the enemies piled up right where I'm at. They're trying to aggro to me and also the thrall that happens to be in the bait box. This also shows the bait box for the golems. You can see the golems spawning in there, and this is where I'm going to switch to my star metal arrows. And I really feel like star metal arrows are a better utility against the golems than the ballista, and the reason why is because you can move around and shoot those golems from the proper angle that's going to give you the easiest shot. With the ballista, it is in a stationary position, and so you can't always line up those perfect shots. Now, I was in God mode while I was doing this, but I was trying hard to actually defeat these golems. I do think with the bait box, I would actually add a roof. That way it's easier to get up on top of, and that way as they're walking towards you, you can effectively shoot at the line that's walking up towards your bait box. And you don't have the issue like I had where I couldn't actually stand on the wall. Now this bait box did get destroyed during this testing. Not only did the bait box get destroyed, but part of the base took damage as well. So it's very important for you to figure out ways to keep the golems at bay as they start to attack your base. The golem wave is not easy. It is likely one of the hardest waves to deal with in the new Purge system. Even with accidentally being in God mode, you can see how much difficulty I had taking out all of the golems as they were coming to the base. And I'm not even really focused on the golems that don't have the jars on their head. There's actually another line of them walking up right now. This took over 100 star metal arrows. Now there is a bug going on with arrows that makes it so that they don't always do damage if you are shooting them in rapid succession. So my suggestion is to shoot, take a second for the game to catch up, and then shoot again. It does consume the arrow when you let it loose, but it doesn't do any damage. So be watchful of that, and if you start seeing that happen, you want to slow down the pace of how fast you're shooting those arrows. During this wave, there is a humanoid enemy that is spawning in the golems. If you can make it to the area where the golems are spawning in and kill him there, it will stop the golems from spawning in, so you'll get less waves. However, if he leaves his station and comes to attack your base, he has spawned in all the golems, and killing him is less of a priority at that point in time. If you take a look at the base, you can see I have many varying heights of foundations inside this build. There are the lowest foundations, a step up foundations, and then multiple step up foundations. This allows me to use those different height structures to give myself an opportunity to get away and to also keep thralls safe and confined. Now, building foundations at different heights isn't anything new, but if you haven't done it before, you may not know how to do it seamlessly and have them all connect. So there are a couple of ways that you can do this. You can see we have the lowest height there, we have the highest height there, we have a medium height there. And I'm just going to show you these three examples and how you can accomplish this. So we'll build right off of this guy, and we want to match that height. So we'll just place one there, and then we're going to grab a fence. That fence is actually going to give us our next height. So you can see it gives us two locations where we can actually build that. Additionally, if we destroy that, we can use a wall to do the same thing. Now you may be wondering, well, why is this one that height and that one's that height? Well, that's because I went through the process of doing it twice. So if we place that there and we step it up, and then we place this here and we step it up, now we have the same height. So that's how you can step up foundations. But what about stepping them down? As you can see, we have this height here, and we also have that height there. Well, that is the same process, but with different building pieces. So we're going to take the fence foundation and place it there. We can then step that down. And we can continue that process until we get to the point where we're at that same height. And we can continue even below that and get it at whatever height we actually like. So that is how you're able to step up and step down foundations. You're either going to use a wall or you're going to use the fence to step up a foundation. If you want to step them down, you would use the fence foundation in order to accomplish that. And this can really help you create diversity inside your base so that you have areas of safety and pockets in that base that you can escape the oncoming onslaught from the Purge. Thanks for staying through the whole video. Don't forget to whack the like button on your way out, and let me know in the comment section below if you have any further questions about the Purge. I'd like to thank all my YouTube members for their continued support. Y'all are absolute legends. If you're looking for more information on what's coming in the Age of War Chapter 4, click the video that's on the screen right now.